Hello, and welcome to the Space King podcast, where all things converge, from the innermost depths of the mind to the outer reaches of the cosmos. This is your reality. Started having dreams. I guess it was a few days later or whatever.
Okay.
She started having dreams that recounting everything that happened to them
Oh, wow.
and all this. And so it got pretty intense. And they had missing time involved in it, you know, and it was a lot of stuff going. Now, the other interesting thing about this, they were an interracial couple.
Okay.
And this is in 1961. It's not a big deal nowadays, but back then this was a big deal. And I find that interesting because people were like, you know, they made up the story and all this. And I'm like, why would they want to draw attention to themselves? You know, especially with being like an interracial couple.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily want to, you know, I don't know. It just seems like, why would they draw more attention to their lives than they're probably already receiving?
Yeah, no, I get that.
And they kind of talk about that in the story and everything that I had read about them. But I just find it really, it's one of the most interesting stories. And they claim that they were on the ship, that they were, you know, examined by the aliens. They spoke to them. They told them where they were from by showing them a star map. I mean, they really had, you know, close encounter of the third kind, it turns out, in the end. And it's pretty interesting. I think that's one of, yeah, I think that was and that's really documented. There's a lot of video about, I guess there's actually video of her on YouTube talking about it too. That you can see and all that kind of stuff. There's an historical marker where the encounter took place. The state actually put down a historical marker of where this happened.
Really?
All of their stuff is documented. I guess their papers and everything, and I think it's kept at the University of New Hampshire, maybe. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a very interesting story.
That is really cool.
So, what do you have on your list of things?
Well, of course, we know it's super popular. Is what I had a article about was. It was, you know, of course, it's the New York Post, so, you know, take it with a grain of salt if you want to, because, you know, I have a thing against any kind of mainstream media for the most part, obviously. But their article is, Earth could shrink if black hole experiments fail, astronomer warns, and they're referring to CERN.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and they're basically talking about the size of CERN, how it's 2 football fields in length, and if they, in size, essentially 2 football fields, and if they were to end up, for whatever reason, having some sort of catastrophe where something were to go wrong, they could unintentionally create a black hole that would consume the Earth.
Yeah, that was one of their big concerns when they started doing CERN, that a lot of scientists were like, you know, if you create these, you know, they're looking for these particles, you create a miniature black hole, you could like suck the entire universe into this thing and destroy everybody. There was a lot of talk about that when they first started doing it.
Yeah, and this is actually an article from October 2nd, 2018, so not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
they've been talking about that for a while.
Yeah, well, apparently someone by the name Lord Reese had stated that the second scary possibility is that the quarks reassemble themselves into compressed objects called stranglets. Either stranglets or strangelets. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce that. But it also says that in itself would be harmless. However, under some hypothesis, a strangelet could, by contagion, convert anything else it encounters into a new form of matter, transform the entire Earth into a hyperdense sphere about 100 meters, 328 feet across.
Well, I guess we wouldn't know it if it happened.
No, we would be squished, potentially. Or maybe we'd be many people, who knows?
Yeah, right. We all get shrunk down. There we go.
Yep. And then they state that a third danger is the particle accelerators could destroy the Earth by a catastrophe that engulfs space itself, according to the scientists. Now, that would be, in a messed up way, a very impressive feat to have the entirety of space consumed into a black hole where the Earth used to be, because there's some pretty big black holes out there already that we believe are out there.
Yeah,
So,
I remember hearing when they, like I said, when they first were starting to build CERN and everything, that was a big concern, that they were going to create a black hole that would destroy us and everything. And I guess it's still a concern if that article's from 2018. They're worried about, I guess, new particles or whatever causing that problem.
yeah. I mean, I don't have this in this article, but I have also heard in the past related to the CERN gates that some, I'm not the CERN gate, sorry, the CERN accelerator, that some people believe that they're trying to open a gate to hell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you never heard that one?
No. What's the purpose of that? Like, why did they think that?
They think that the scientists, it's a conspiracy theory, and they think that all the scientists that are doing it know what they're really trying to do, and that's to open a portal or a dimension rift of some sort so that they can access the hell realm, and that those entities can come out, or we can go in.
Okay, well, that's interesting, because that kind of falls into, one of my favorite people, David Icke. With the interdimensional reptilian beings that he talks about, and how, or as he calls them, the Archon, they're trying to turn this world into theirs, and their world feeds off of, which would be like a hell type of realm, destruction and death and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
That's interesting to hear that, because it's not the first time I've heard that people want to open in a dimension that would cause that to happen in this, in our space.
And that's if demons and hell even exist in the matter in which they think it does.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother.
Well, we're gonna get into that later on. One of the things we're going to talk about our news articles, but then Jericho's going to tell us about his personal experience that he's had, and so we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah, I've had many different personal experiences, but I'm going to talk about a very specific personal experience related to the topic tonight. So
yeah,
it's yeah.
The second story I have here isn't this isn't about a abduction per se. It's about a study that was done.
Okay.
And trying to be biased, I guess, or not biased, I should say. But anyways, this story, what this article talks about is there was a study done on people who have believed they have been abducted, and victims of sleep disorder. And I don't know what the parameters were for this experiment. They don't say in the article. They don't say how they got the people. They don't say, if they put an ad out or how they got these people, and what the criteria was they were looking for. But what was interesting is that...
Hey, real quick, not to cut you off, but I saw someone posted something in the chat.
Send 100 humans to hell at a time, weapons and drop crates, and have the people fight in a battle royale with you. Is that Ryan? It's funny.
Maybe. That might be him.
Yeah. So they did this study. And this guy, Dr. Richard McNell, is a psychologist from Harvard University. Okay. And he studied people who've claimed to have who were kidnapped by extraterrestrials. Okay. And basically, his whole thing is that these people are suffering from sleep paralysis, and that they're not really being abducted. Is that it's a sleep disorder.
Okay, I know
And
sleep paralysis
that's fine. I have no
Yeah.
problem with that. My problem with this study is, though,
Okay.
because of the phenomena of people being abducted. I mean, there's millions of people around the world who claim to have been abducted. Okay, how many people do you think they used in this study? Just how many?
This study specifically?
Yeah, like how many people do you think they would do when you have millions of people around the world being abducted?
Okay. Well,
How
I
many people do you
know.
think they put into the study?
I know how they actually do that stuff a lot of the time. I've seen the lack of effort that they've put towards most things. So you would think realistically that they'd use at least 1,000 or so, but I'm guessing that they probably only used a couple people.
They used 10.
Yeah, see, 10.
And the conclusion they came to was that anyone who is being abducted is suffering from a sleep disorder and is hallucinating, and that it's not real. It's all sleep disorder. And I just really, you studied 10 people. Okay, maybe out of the 10 you studied, that's the case. But then it comes back, because what they say in this article is that these people suffered from hallucinations. They also had a belief in New Age beliefs. They believed in tarot cards. So my question is, how did they find these people? How did they get these people? Because was that part of their criteria that you're into New Age stuff? And
I would assume so.
I don't know.
Sounds like a way to flavor the results in their favor, if you ask me.
Yeah, it was interesting. But I mean, you can't study 10 people and claim that the whole phenomena is just people suffering from a sleep disorder. And I just found that to be pretty ridiculous.
That would be like studying 10 people who snore, and then for all 10 of them happen to drink coffee, so coffee is the result. I mean, snoring is the result of consuming coffee. So, yeah, that's just... Yeah, no, I've been through a lot of... In the past, I went through a lot of medical hardship with health and everything, so I have my opinions of a lot of that stuff where I don't really buy into a lot of the mainstream of any of it anymore, where I used to. I used to say, go to the doctors to give me this. Yeah, it worked perfectly. But I don't believe in that anymore, really. I know that there's a time and a place, but they can't fix everything because they're not willing to take the chance to actually explore what it could be rather than just sticking to what they are told it is.
Yeah, I just think the way this article reads is that this guy went in with a biased opinion already, that this is a psychological disorder and that's what it is, and that's what I'm going to prove with my tests. And I don't think he went in with an open mind to really find the truth.
How much funding do you think he had?
Who knows? It's hard to say. I mean, he could have got a crap load of money. He could have got none. Who knows? I've just found that article very interesting. This was in 2000. This article is from 2003, February 2003.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, let's move on from that.
Okay.
Nonsense. So, what do you? Unless you got agenda.
Well, I got some other stuff I can talk about. To be honest, I don't have another article right now because I've been trying to fix this damn stream all day.
You didn't do your homework.
I didn't do my homework. Christmas and stuff. I'm not making excuses, but Christmas and New Year's and having company over and just...
Yeah, I hear that, right?
But...
So, I have another article if you don't, or I have another thing if you don't have anything up.
I have something we could talk about.
Sure, go right ahead.
Alright, so... Since the theme of the day is aliens and everything, I do have a YouTuber that I'm actually going to plug a YouTuber here. There's a YouTuber that I really enjoy watching. It goes by the name Secure Team 10. Have you heard of it?
Okay. No, I'm not familiar. I may have seen the video, but I don't remember the name. You know me, I'm terrible with
Actually, you know what I will do? I'm actually going to plug a link even into the chat real quick. But my father and I actually really enjoy this YouTuber. He talks about different space conspiracies and all that stuff. And sometimes it's... Well, hold on. I just realized the audio is playing. Oh, my bad. But anyways, he does some pretty cool stuff. And he... Actually, you know what? Never mind. What I was going to say, I just realized you might be more interested in talking about. So go ahead with your article. I changed my mind.
No, what were you going to...
I was going to talk about one of the things, but I think it talks about your article, so...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Well, the other one that I came up with, which I thought was real interesting, this is from 2018, and this is about U.S. Representative... what's her name again? Rodriguez Aguilera.
Okay.
And she was running for U.S. House of Representatives in Florida, I think it was. And anyway, she had claimed to be abducted by aliens. And she said, this does not define me as, who I am in a candidate. She was she was endorsed by the Miami Herald. And this had all been out, already. And what I find interesting about it is that, there was a time, you came out and said this, she would have been ruined. Like, that would have been the end of her political career,
Yeah.
And it shows people are more willing to accept this type of thing nowadays and, listen to what the stories that people have, because so many people have had these experiences of, having encounters of some kinds with, like they say, either, abductions by greys or seeing reptilians or the Nordics or, shadow people. All those types of things. And I guess this happened to her when she was 7 years old. And then that's when she had the abduction experience. And then at 17, she claimed to have spotted a UFO and had an encounter of some kind with a UFO. It doesn't really say what the encounter was, but she claims since then that she has been in contact with the aliens telepathically. Long after the abduction happened, which that was the part that I really found interesting. Also,
yeah,
she's still in contact with them, but it's a telepathic thing.
I do have to comment and say that I definitely could believe that. So.
Yeah, well, I know. I thought that's one of the reasons I brought this up, because of your personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
That I thought you'd find this very interesting.
Yeah, I do believe telepathy does exist on a certain level. I don't think it's something that. I think it's something you would have to practice at a lot to be tapped into it all the time. But I do think there are different moments where people on a regular basis share thoughts, like they're thinking the same thing, or they both say the same thing at the same time. I think those are very minor cases of it. Mm-hmm. But obviously, there's certain things that can lead up to that. Like, you're both talking about something, and you both, there's a difference between you both randomly say the same thing at the same time out of nowhere, versus you're both singing a song and listen to a song and you happen to say the same part of the same song at the same time. There's a difference, I think.
There is absolutely a difference between that. No, but I think telepathic communication between people is absolutely a thing. I know someone I know personally had an experience when they were a kid. They're a twin. And they
guy in the chat, Rybe Bizzles just said twins. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, like twins.
Like twins.
And they had an experience. Son of a bitch. So they had an experience where they had a dream. This is kind of like an outer body experience, but a telepathic experience, where they had a dream where they went down in their kitchen and they had glasses of milk, and then had something to eat in their kitchen. Okay, and then they both dreamt this, and then went back to bed. The next day, there were 2 glasses in the sink and some dirty dishes. Mm-hmm. Now, they didn't sleepwalk because their parents were in the living room.
Okay.
okay, during that night, and I guess there was also someone else in the living room the whole night or whatever. So it's not like they sleepwalk and go down there and that type of thing. And they had the same exact type of experience. I also know someone who had an experience that when their mother died, before they had gotten the phone call,
they knew.
His mother appeared to him at the end of his bed, and he could see her, and he knew. He was like, my mother passed away. And sure enough, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes after that, he got a phone call and said, Mom, your mom passed away. And so it's possible. And I think Busy knows what I'm thinking right now. To be precise. So.
He said you guys are connected and he beat you to it. He, she.
Exactly.
Uh-oh. You see that popping up there, that moderator, that sword right there? See what he's saying? He's calling you out. He's calling you out, man.
You sure we got the right guy to be our moderator? Anyways, that's it for my articles. Those are the 3 articles I had. I really think that the Betty and Barney Hill is a really interesting story. And if you want to learn more about it, people should go look it up and really read the article, because it really gets into the detail of what happened to them and stuff. And the other ones were just kind of things that I saw that were interesting.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about your personal?
Do we want to jump straight into it, or want to get some other stuff in there first? Because either way is fine with me.
Yeah, well, no, if you have something else you want to discuss, bring it right up.
Well, so, okay, I'll talk a little prelude to some of the stuff, is that I find it very interesting that it's like a huge majority of the population believes that aliens exist, right? Like most people, you ask, I think they exist.
Yeah.
And it baffles me that the majority of the population believes that aliens exist, but if someone were to say that they're abducted by an alien, it's instantly like, oh, you're crazy. It's like, I find that interesting because it's so many people believe in it, yet so many people are like, not my backyard, not my house, nobody that I know. It's like they always think it happens, just not to anyone that they know. They don't think it's possible to happen to people that they know. And it's kind of, there's a lot of things in life like that. Like, you can look at a lot of this stuff going on now, and people like terrorism and all that stuff, but it's always not in my backyard. And I just find it interesting that humanity, not a whole, but as a large portion of humanity, believes in these things just not happening near them. And if you tell them it happens, it's just, nah, not possible. Because
I mean, a lot of people have had these experiences. They don't talk about them too. A lot of people don't talk about the experiences they've had. And I mean, nowadays, you're right. I think the last poll, I think it was like something like 80% or 90% of people believe, that we've been visited by aliens and all that kind of stuff. And well, I mean, that study that I told you about, the doctor, the guy from Harvard, one of the, right away, it's going to be something else besides, it couldn't possibly be that. Even though so many people do believe in it. And that's one of the things that's happening, though, is that the public is like, look, I had this experience, you had this experience, people are having these experiences, we know it's real, we don't care what you're telling us. And so many people, I mean, these experiences have been going on forever. And that case that I talked about, that was one of the first cases that was like documented, with medical doctors and all that kind of stuff. But there are encounters that go back a lot further than that. I mean, if you just off the top of my head, I don't remember what state it was in, but it was in the 1800s. I think that's when it was. There was a town that claimed that they had a ship crash, and that there was an alien. They buried the body at that place, and I guess there was talk. This was a few years back. There was talk about exhuming the body.
Oh wow!
To inspect it and everything. They didn't, and I forget what the reason. There was some big excuse why they weren't going to exhume the body. Either like the town stepped in, like mayor or something. They were like, no, we're not going to do that. Or they tried to exhume the body, but then like it was gone. but there's a marker that says, this is where this creature was buried and everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but if you claim to have seen something, people will tell you, yeah, I believe in it, and then you tell someone, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, well, that's nice,
You're crazy, or you're just seeking attention, like Ry Bizzle pointed out.
Mm-hmm. And they think you got like a screw loose or something like that.
Yeah.
But
oh man.
it happens to so many people, and that's one of the things I mentioned earlier about spaceking.us, which is the website.
It's still under construction right now, though.
Yeah, but that's on your end, but once that type of thing, once you get that up and everything, people that have had these experiences and stuff, it's a place for them to go. You can post about what happened and talk to other people that have had these experiences and stuff like that. I personally have never had anything experience. I told you this once before. I had an experience when I was in my early 20s. Me and my two best friends, we don't know what we saw. It was like 10 miles away from us. It was triangular shaped. It had the lights on it. It was flying over the city. We watched it for about half an hour, and then all of a sudden it just shot up in the air and disappeared. I have no idea what the hell we saw.
Yeah.
I can't say it was anything, could have been anything, but we couldn't identify it, so technically it was a UFO. Doesn't mean it was little green men from outer space. I just know we saw something, so.
Yeah, no. I know what you mean. That's quite the opposite of my claims, and this would be the first time that I'll be talking about it publicly in any kind of fashion, because it's I had, to put it lightly, I had an event where I started going through a lot of stuff, started experiencing a lot of stuff, and some family tried to commit me to the hospital. So I don't really talk about it that much, but to come out and talk about it, just to get it out there so people know that, I mean, realistically, I could be making this all up for everybody knows. For as far as everybody knows, I could be making this up. But I'm going to go out there and tell you that this is my personal experience. And it's okay to talk about it. I think it'd be best to find a platform in which you can talk about it, where you don't have to worry about people trying to lock you up, throw you away, or do whatever. Like, try to get you committed to a mental institution, because a lot of stuff to me is very real. I believe it's real, and there's a lot of stuff that people go through, like you said, and they just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And
that article that with the doctor also, referencing that article. Also, they said in there, not alien abductions, also that these people are hallucinating for angels and demons and vampires. I thought it was interesting through the vampire thing in there. I'm like, really, dude? Come on,
Well,
that was a little. I know, it just set you off, right?
Well, not even that. It's just the fact that I know I'm not hallucinating. Okay, I've been through a lot of stuff in these last 6 months when this all started for me, and I've seen I thought I was crazy at first. I truly did. I thought I was going through a mental breakdown or something. I didn't know what was going on. It was all new to me. I had no idea. I've seen this thing over here, seen this stuff, experiencing this and that, and I'm just like, oh, what's going on? This is nuts. But over the months, I've had many points of confirmation where other people have seen or experienced what I have without me saying anything to them about it, and they, in exact detail, saw exactly what I did or experienced exactly what I did and said it to me without me ever saying anything to them. So there's been lots of points of confirmation for me in my life that leads me to believe that I'm not crazy, and that there are things that we experience on another level that people try to tune out, or they try to medicate themselves to get rid of it because they think they are crazy.
So I guess start at the very beginning. Like, what was the first thing that happened to you? Like, in the very beginning.
Ooh, do we want to start at the very beginning with that, or talk about what we're here to talk about tonight? Because I could go on forever.
Oh, I thought you wanted to talk about what happened to you in the beginning, and then go from there.
Okay, well, I'll give a little bit of backstory. Yeah, I'll give.
Don't have to get into everything.
Yeah, I won't get into everything. I'll give us. Well,
Just what you're comfortable with, obviously.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I'll start off with some of the stuff in the beginning. So, in the very beginning of all this, there was a period of about a month where I just, for whatever reason, I kept visually / mentally, kind of like if you're daydreaming or you're imagining, like you're trying to come up with a project or you're trying to design something and you can see it out in front of you, but it's not in your eyes. It's like you're mentally seeing it, but in front of you in place of what is actually there in front of you, kind of like a daydream. Or like if you're thinking about like in something that you experience, like you're remembering something that you and someone else went through and you're really focused on it, and it's like you can see it like it's a movie to yourself, but you're not really paying attention to what's actually in front of you when your eyes are open, like you're tuned out. You know what I'm saying? It's it's like that. And I was seeing this grid wall. It was, imagine you have straight out in front of you, there's a grid, and it's as high as you can see and it's as low as you can see, and it's purple and yellow and green, and I had no idea what was going on. I was like, okay, what's this? Like, why is this here? What is this thing? I don't understand why I'm seeing this in my mind constantly. Well, I know some people that are into a lot of the spiritual stuff, so I approached them about it, asked what it was, talked about it with them, and they're like, it could be, because it could be something real. Because I told them, I said, it feels like I'm walking a thin line between this world and another one. And I couldn't explain why I felt that way or how I knew that. It's like, I felt like I could reach out and grab that grid and pull it back and there would be something behind it. I can't explain to you why I felt that way. I just was seeing it and that's how I felt. Well, this person said, well, maybe you are walking a thin line between two worlds. And then they started talking to me more about it, and then they said something that led me to believe that they were more saying, well, it could be a mental thing, it could be just all in your head. I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just stop thinking about it, I'll try to get it to go away. And after a while it did go away, I stopped seeing it. Well, fast forward a few months, and I had started working at this new company, and I was there for a month or two, and it was all just normal job, doing my job, getting paid, interacting with people how I had to, and everything. Well, the one day I came in, and the people I was working with, they were talking about exorcisms and seeing ghosts and like the Catholic Church, all this stuff. So I was like, wow, that's nuts. So I figured, they're crazy. Sounds a lot more crazy than my crazy did. So why not talk to them? You know what I mean? Like, they're not gonna sit here and call me crazy when they're talking about exorcisms and ghosts and stuff. When
your crazy's not as crazy as theirs. Right?
Exactly. So I asked them about it, and I went up to the one guy, and there was two of them. There was a man and a woman. I was talking to them about it, and I asked them, so what would it be if you saw like a wall or a grid somehow? And they're like, oh, well, can you like explain it more? So I tried explaining it more. It's hard to explain a non-tangible wall that's a grid made out of different colors. Like, that's about as descriptive as it can get without showing somebody on paper, like a drawing of it. And so they said, okay, well, can you visualize it? I said, you mean just like think of it or imagine it in my head, like how you do everything? They said, yeah, like that. I said, okay, sure, yeah, I can try that. And then as I'm trying to think about it, the man looks over to the woman and says, tell me when he's visualizing it, when he's seeing it. And then I look at both of them like, what? Like I just give them this look like, how would you even know that? And then lo and behold, I did catch a glimpse of it, and she nods to him at the moment. I caught a glimpse of it in my mind, and I was like, whoa. Okay, no, that's nuts. So then he did right after I saw her nod to him, he touched my arm, and all of my hairs on my body stuck up, and I got goosebumps. It's just like I have no idea. It was like I was overcome with, like, I don't know. It was like, the best way I can describe it is energy. It's like, imagine a blanket of a tingling sensation flew over my body, and then all of a sudden, boom! That wall was in my face, Worse than it was the first time I saw it, when I thought I was going crazy and I could not get rid of it. And I was just like I felt like that's all I could see. I could see everything else still, but it was in my face, like very much so. But in my mind, because the mind's eye, not really with my physical eyeballs seeing it with you and me sitting in front of each other. But so that, and then he said, "Whoa!" The guy said, "Well, I've never seen anything like that." And he started describing it, and then right there and then there, I knew something was going on, because I was overwhelmed. I had no idea what was happening. And I'm like, how does she know this? How is he describing this? You know what I mean? Like, I was completely dumbfounded at all of this. And then,
Now,
good.
why do you think, like, how do you think he was able to describe it?
He was able to see it in one shape or another, is what he led me to believe. And
Do you think that you were projecting that to him, or that
well, I could have been projecting it to him, but some of the things that happened over the course of the rest of that day, led me to believe that it was more than just that. It wasn't like, I know I told him a little bit about it, but then he was talking about it, and he's like, so basically, right then and there, I was still skeptical, because I was like, this guy could just be saying this based on what I said, but then I just felt like he wasn't lying for some reason. And then I'll work up to him, but there's a series of events that led me to believe that he didn't actually, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't make it up. And, because what happened? Do you have any other questions before I continue, or?
No, go ahead. I'm fine.
So, what happened next? He was telling me, oh, well, that's a gate. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean it's a gate? He said, it's a gate in which people pass through from this physical realm into another one, and there's normally things to be learned there. I said, okay, well, I have no idea what you're talking about. That doesn't make sense to me. And he said, okay, I'm gonna try to go through it. And then right when he said that, like a moment later, he ends up grabbing his head and killing over the table, like the desk, like he's gonna throw up, and he turns pale. His skin literally goes pale, like he just got sick.
Really?
And yeah, so I said, oh, I was like, what's going on? Are you okay? He said, yeah, there's a gatekeeper. I'm like, what do you mean a gatekeeper? What are you talking about? He said, it's a gatekeeper. It's a being that protects gates and only allows certain people through. I said, man, I have no idea what you're talking about. That sounds crazy. I've never seen any creatures. All I see is this stupid wall. And then him and the woman look at each other, and after they look at each other, they look back at me, and then he says, well, if you don't see the gatekeeper, it's because you're the one that's meant to go through the gate. I said, what? At this point, I didn't believe everything he was saying. I believed some of it, but I didn't believe everything, because I was so dumbfounded at the fact that they even knew when I was thinking of it. You know what I mean? Just the whole thing. And so he left after a little while. We talked a little longer. He left, and then I was there, me and the woman, and I was just continuing my day, but I was doing my job, working, but all I could see was this damn wall just there. Still, it was terrible. It was just in my face constantly. And it didn't matter what I was doing. I was talking to other people that were there. I was helping people. I could just see this wall the whole time. And so I'm standing there by myself at one point, and I said, you know what? Maybe I can pull this wall back, and maybe there is something behind it. So I reached out. I visualized myself grabbing it, and I pulled, and a chunk of it came off. And I could see something. It looked like there was light there. I was like, okay, this is bizarre. Maybe, like, if I'm crazy, let's just see where it goes. At this point, you know what I mean? Just let's see what happens.
Yeah, all right.
So I open it up. It's like I pull it out, and like I pull out a chunk. Imagine like a hand-sized chunk of this wall is now missing, and there's just bright white light coming through it. Bright white light. So I said, okay. So I do it again. More lights coming through, and there's more missing. Do it again. I do it a couple more times, and then the last time I do it, I pull it, I grab it, pull it back, and then the wall's gone. And then it's just a blinding bright white light. and then the bright light comes down. It's like someone shined high beams at you, and then they turned them off slowly.
Okay.
And then you're able to see. And what I saw, which I don't know why I would be thinking about this or why my mind would project this there, is when I did that, I saw, it's like I walked into an ancient but pristine land or something, and there was cobblestone roadways, there was like, it was like augmented reality almost. So you know how like augmented reality on a phone, you can see what's going on the phone and it projects it into the real world through the camera, like just so you can see it. It was like that, where everything I looked at was also layered with this like cobblestone world, and there was pillars, there was vines, there was waterfalls, there was clouds, and there was like some beings, like I don't know, some wing things floating around, like giant bumblebees. They weren't giant bumblebees, but that's the way they acted. They just like floated around. And that day is the day that my life changed, and it was very much like, you know, I believe there's a lot more to life than we like to think that there is right here in front of us, because it started a whole series of events that have changed my life forever. And so that had happened.
Now after you had this, like the experience for the first time and everything, did you tell anybody? I mean, did you tell your anyone in your family, or were you just kind of scared and kept it to yourself?
I kept it to myself for the most part. I did talk to the people there a little bit about it, and they were interested, but they kind of kept their distance a little bit about it. Like, the lady tried viewing it, and she said she could view it from a distance, but she couldn't get in, and she described some of the stuff I had seen without me telling her what I saw, because it was very worldly feeling, is what she said. It looked very worldly, like, I guess in her words, worldly, but not what she had seen of heaven before. So right there I was like, wait, what? You're kind of like, you're losing me here, because that sounds nuts.
Now, but when did you like finally say something to your family and stuff? I mean, did you tell them because you were worried for your sanity, or how come you approached your family about it?
Well, I didn't say anything for a while because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't insane, or that I was insane, and I figured if I was having mental issues, I wanted to let it go to see. It's like I took the very, quote, scientific approach to it, as in I tested it and I got confirmations whether or not I was actually seeing things, and other people could confirm or not confirm what it was I was experiencing. And in a lot of cases, it was confirmed by other people without me saying anything. So at the very least, I was led down to two realities, or two beliefs, that either A, I was crazy and they somehow knew what I was thinking, or B, we were experiencing the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, they knew my thoughts and what I was seeing to myself, and they somehow tapped into it as option A, or option B, we were experiencing the same thing, because I couldn't think of any other possible explanation as to how they would know what I was thinking or what I was seeing without me telling them. Mm-hmm. You know, because that wouldn't make sense to me if they could. Well, I mean, I don't have that same belief anymore, but at the time then, that's what I was thinking. And
yes.
Good.
So you had confirmations from, I guess, other people you knew, friends or whatever, that you would ask them questions and stuff to see what their responses would be? So
basically, let's say I was sitting next... Just an example. So let's say I was sitting next to you, and I was seeing something walking into the room through the wall. That's how I was seeing it. And then I would ask somebody who I believe to be into this stuff, I said, do you see anything going on? And then they would think about it, and they would look, and they said, yeah, there's something over there walking toward. It'd be like, let's say, like, I asked you, and you said, yeah, there's something there walking towards us through the wall. That's exactly like how those confirmations worked. So it's like, I just said, do you see something? And then they pointed exactly where I saw the thing, told me what it looked like, and told me what it was doing. And that's exactly what I was seeing happen before they said anything. I didn't give them any details. So,
I mean, how did you not, like, lose your mind? with this? I mean, how did you keep your sanity? I guess, well, you kind of said you took a scientific approach to it, but still, you had to at some point think, I'm just losing it here.
Well, I did think that for the first month, probably. I wasn't sure. At first, I thought it was, but then the only thing that kept me from thinking I was going insane was the confirmations of other people saying things. Like, I kept trying to get confirmations and testing it to make sure. Like, it's like I kept checking myself the whole time just to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. You know what I mean? Because if I was going crazy, I was going to go get some natural medicine and treat myself.
Now, did you... Now, you said you talked to those people at work and, discussed it with them and everything and stuff. Did you continue to discuss it with them, or did you kind of just do the confirmation thing to try and confirm to yourself? Or did you, once you were convinced, did you continue to talk with those people at work?
I did. And I kept doing confirmations the whole time. I still do confirmations today sometimes still after 6 months. And, just to keep myself, just to keep myself in check to make sure I'm not just imagining things. But yes, I continue to talk to the people at work, and in certain ways it was good, in certain ways it was bad, because not everyone that I talked to was this way, but certain people came to try to use my inexperience with that kind of thing against me. So there were some negatives to it, but the next thing that had happened after I'd experienced that, like the whole, like seeing that world and everything, is that guy came back the next day, like for his next shift. And when I went to leave, so we were talking, and I went out and I was talking to him in the parking lot, and he came out and he said, I want to try to see what you're seeing. I want to try to see all that stuff. And so I was sitting by my car, and he was walking towards me, and he was like pacing around a little bit, and it looked like he was rolling his shoulders, trying to like someone's about to get in a fight, or someone's trying to massage their shoulders to be comfortable or something. You know that look where someone's pacing and like moving their shoulders and adjusting. Well, he's doing that, and I sat there, and for whatever reason, the more he paced and did that, for whatever reason, I just got this feeling like he's starting to become really creepy for some reason. I don't know what it is. Like it's almost like I feel like he's a different person. And I was like, okay, I don't know, this is weird. But so I told him, I said, yeah, you're starting to become kind of, for whatever reason, you're starting to like creep me out a little bit. And he said, no, yeah, well, don't worry about that. I'm just opening myself up. And I said, okay. So then he said, go ahead and think about, like, try to visualize some of that stuff and see it. I said, because he said, I'll be able to see some of the stuff that you're seeing. I said, all right, well, if that's the way it works, I need to warn you that my mind, I can focus on a crap ton of stuff all at once. I could focus, you know what I mean? Like, I think about A, B, C, D, E, F, and G all at the same time. Mm-hmm. I think we all do, to an extent.
Yeah. Now, before you continue, a question.
Yeah.
Was this something that he himself had already had experience with, or was he trying to experience this because you had told him and he was open-minded to having the experience, or had he already been experienced?
Good question, because to my understanding, what I know now is he's already had a lot of experiences of his own in regards to spiritual stuff. And apparently he worked with the Catholic Church and all this other stuff, like all sorts of stuff, exorcisms and stuff. And so he's already experienced the whole world, like a huge ton of this stuff, like lots of it. He had already experienced lots of it. And what I was experiencing specifically, he had not experienced. And he didn't have me tell him about a lot of the stuff. He just told me to visualize it, and then he was experiencing it, and he was saying things and pointing out things that I was seeing without saying anything.
Okay.
So, does that make sense?
Was he trying? Yeah. Was his attitude that he wanted to help you because he had these experiences, or what was his reasoning? Wanting to be involved in this.
The attitude and the experience. What he said and what I was feeling out of. We can all, at some level, tell what people's motives are, even without them saying it. Mm-hmm. it felt like it was unexplored territory for him that he wanted to explore and figure out what was going on.
Okay.
So it was something new to him. Not completely new, but new in my very particular case. Like, he already knew of supposedly different realms and stuff like that, but in my particular case, he had not seen that specific thing before.
Okay, I got you.
So it's like you see a bunch of crayons, but you didn't see this one shade of blue before, and now you're curious.
All right.
So
at that point, did others get involved in this, or was it just that one time with him? What continued after that?
Well, I'll tell you this next part, but yes, other people did start getting involved, but before I get to that, I'm going to tell you what happened next so you guys can get an idea of what this person was like and what I was experiencing with these people. So I told you previously that I had experienced that world, correct? That
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he had me opening up, trying to see this stuff. And when I say opening up, imagine somehow like expanding your comfort zone in your mind, if that makes sense. It's hard to describe. But so I was visualizing all this stuff, and he was seeing it, and he was saying what it was. He said, "Oh, that's interesting." Starts describing it in detail, and I never said a word. So, and he's describing exactly what I was seeing. Well, at one point, for whatever reason, I caught myself focusing on him all of a sudden. And for a split second, when I went to focus on him, I focused on him, and then in that moment I focused on him, I saw a wave of... It's like I saw black energy shoot out of him from his... Like, it looked... Not black energy, it looked like black smoke. Or... like... shadow coming out of this guy, and it shot out both his sides from like his rib cages out, and it shot out like fins almost, and it just started like pouring out into the air, and I'm like, what am I seeing? This is nuts, is what I was telling myself. And then like the moment after I saw that, his eyes went huge and he stopped talking and he turned pale. I was like, okay. And I started backing away from him a little bit, and I said, I don't know what I just did, but I'm sorry. And I knew I did something. I said, I don't know what I did, I'm sorry, I'm gonna back. I just knew that I shouldn't be standing next to him anymore. That's all I knew. I just, in the back of my head, like, okay, time to leave. So I walked away, and actually I got the timing wrong. It was the end of his shift and the start of my shift at this point. And so I walked away, and I started walking back, and I was walking back slowly. He's looking at me, and he looks like he's just got this like blank look on his face, and he looked really uncomfortable. It's like you just told him his grandma died or something.
Okay.
Like that shock factor. It's like he's in shock. So I started walking away. I said, "All right, well, you have a good night. I'm gonna go into work. I'll see you later. Bye." Like, I'm out.
The dip.
Yep, but bye. Like, bye, Felicia. But no. So I started walking back, and then I was sitting at work, and for the next, I don't know, 4 hours, I just see this black stuff that came out of him. It looks like a cloud, just like it's just staying out there and floating around in the parking lot. I was just like, oh man, I don't know what happened. Doesn't feel very good. And then 4 hours passed by, and all of a sudden it all like collapses in on itself, stops, like it dissipates, and then like a beam shoots down to the ground and then disappears. And then a second after that, like there's nothing, and then all of a sudden there's a black figure standing there. What you would describe as a shadow person, what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, okay.
So that was my first entity that I had ever seen. And good.
Well, was his response to that later, like, I'm sure you ran into him at work again. What was his attitude towards you? Was he like, hey man, how's it going? Everything's fine? Or was he afraid of you? Or was he just negative towards you? Or like, what was his response?
The best way I can describe it is he came in like a different person. He wasn't acting the same anymore. He didn't talk the same. His posture was completely different. Like his face even looked different to an extent. Like all his facial expressions. Like you come to know people and to know what they look like a lot of the time by the facial expressions that they make.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his face was carried completely differently at this point. He came in and he was just acting weird. And he was talking to me. He's talking to me still, but his voice was different. He carried himself differently. And he's talking to me about it. And I told him, I said, yeah, I saw this thing out there. And I didn't even really describe what it looked like. And then he said, well, was it like, what did it look like? Was it black and blah, blah, blah? I said, yeah. And he said, okay, well, just so you know, that's one of my things that I deal with, and don't worry about it. I was like, okay.
So I mean, so then everything after that, it was just life is normal at work?
No. It was every single day became something new and along those lines. And every single day I was there, I constantly had them talking to me about stuff, him and the other people. And at this point, I'm trying to do my job. I was a manager. I just became a manager at that company. I was trying to do my job. I didn't have enough training for it. And the entire time I'm being bombarded by all this new stuff. So it became very increasingly difficult to complete my job, to actually do my job when I'm experiencing all this new stuff I've experienced before, and I have all this, like this guy and this other people telling me all these things all the time. It's like that stuff became secondary, and then I experienced Birdie Bott's every flavor of beans of everything.
Right. So when now you don't work at this company anymore?
No. I left a while ago. It was time to leave. It became really negative for a while, and it got to the point where I was receiving death threats and everything. So I said, "Later, bitch, I'm gone."
Wait, so okay, now that's interesting. You were receiving death threats from
that guy.
From who? From that guy. Okay, yep. So what was his problem? I mean, why was he sending you death threats at this point?
Telling me that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, what was his reasoning behind? I mean, what happened that he was doing that?
He told me that I needed to contain my abilities. I was putting off too much energy, and things were starting to notice. And that if I didn't contain myself, and if they couldn't contain it, that they would have to kill me to stop it.
Really?
Yep. That's what I was told. And at this point, I had seen a whole slew of things. I saw basically something that looked like hell. I saw a bunch of other beings. I saw, I started hearing things and seeing things. Like there was points where I was able to hear things all the way across the fact. It was like a 1 million square foot building, and there was things I heard that were on the other side of the building that I shouldn't have been able to hear. Like there's sounds that I recognized from when I was over there, like right next to the stuff, but I started at certain points hearing things. Like the one time I heard people talking all the way across the building. The other time I heard some of the electrical equipment going off that was all the way across the building. And so all this stuff was just going crazy. I started getting headaches all the time, and my brain felt like it was on fire all the time. So
yeah,
it's like I was being bombarded by a bunch of new information and didn't know how to handle it or something. And they equated it to me having too much spiritual energy, not knowing how to control it. And they said that they didn't know what I was or who I was, and they didn't like it. That's what he told me. He was part of a group that's, yeah, it's just. Okay,
so now, I mean, the way you're describing this, I would have been scared to death of receiving death threats from these people. Did you go to anybody? I mean, I don't know how you would approach someone and say, hey, I'm scared, I'm getting death threats from these people, and this is why. I mean, I think that people would have thought you were out of your mind. So how did you handle the fact that you're being threatened here?
Well, before I've been threatened for probably about a month, but not that drastically. It was more like, we'll do something about it if you don't. And that's how it started. And it was like, I didn't talk to anybody about it because I didn't think my family would understand, and there's only people I felt comfortable talking to about it. And one night I was at home, and I freaked out about something, and I was like, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And then my family heard that, and they were concerned, and then they tried to, at some point, get me committed to the hospital without my knowledge. Like, they lied to me to get me to go to the hospital. I didn't get committed. It turned out that you can't commit someone unless they're wanting to hurt themselves or somebody else, and I had no desire to hurt anybody, including myself. So that was the first thing, and then go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, you were saying that, maybe you don't want to elaborate on it, I don't know, but you said that something happened that you were freaking out about, and so your family got concerned. Do you want to elaborate on what exactly happened, or
Okay.
what was your family's response? Like, what was your family's first response when this thing started to come out?
Well, they just automatically assumed I was crazy. They assumed that because I had gone through some, I was trying to see somebody, and didn't work out very well, and they assumed that because of that I went into a mental breakdown. So I was like, come on, give me more credit than that. I've been through plenty of breakups, and it's not. But anyways, let me answer your first question first. You asked, how did I come out about it? Well, after that had happened and they tried to get me committed, it didn't work. I talked to them about it. And then I happened to have an entire history of text messages talking about all this kind of stuff with me and this guy. So I showed it to him and said, look, whether or not you think I'm crazy, these are actual text messages from this guy, and this is what it is. And this is what they've been saying. So they, at that point, they didn't believe that I was experiencing anything, but they did believe that this person was talking to me about that kind of stuff as if I was experiencing it.
Okay, so they thought this guy might be
Just completely messing with my head or something, yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, at least they knew it didn't come out of nowhere and that there was other people involved in it. It wasn't just me. So that curbed some things, but that's how that story. But then you asked what happened. Well, what happened that freaked me out that night. Well, the topic of the night is aliens, and I had started seeing what I would describe as grays. They were gray skin color. They were kind of lanky and skinny. They didn't have really, really big eyes. They had smaller gray eyes with a bigger head. Not giant heads like you would see depicted all the time, but larger than a normal human's head and more rounded and bald.
Okay.
So they were completely hairless and they were naked. And I started seeing those, and then I saw in my mind, or however you want to say it, I saw a bunch of aliens, ships, UFOs, or whatever, trying to come down and attack us. So I was like having a, quote, spiritual war with these damn grays.
Now, this was stuff that you were visualizing in your head that was happening, or like you were seeing the...
Well, in my mind's
something that
eye
could
is what
happen?
I should say. It's
Okay.
in my mind's eye. I wasn't imagining it in that sense. Let's say in my mind's eye with like a third eye or whatever you want to call it. In the same way, I've seen all this other stuff so far. In the same exact way I've seen everything else.
Okay.
I saw this stuff. And so I was dealing with that, and I freaked out, and then they were communicating, like you said earlier, telepathically. It's like I was hearing in my own voice. I was hearing words, but they weren't my own thoughts. It wasn't like I was thinking them. It's like I was talking, and then all of a sudden, like in my mind, you can talk to yourself in your mind, like you hear your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was doing that, and then all of a sudden, my voice comes in again over top of what I'm saying. Like there's overlapping, which I've never experienced overlapping of my own thoughts before, if that makes sense. It's like you're talking, and then someone's over talking you, is basically what it was like.
Yeah.
And so they were saying all this stuff, and I ended up, for like the one day, I ended up seeing all these different colors. I ended up drawing these shapes when I was seeing these colors, and it turns out it was waveform of some kind. It was different waveforms. Is what I was drawing. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what someone told me they were, as waveforms, like different sound waves. Okay. So it was interesting, and then I plugged it into a computer, and I was listening to the different sounds that it made, and then all of a sudden my phone shut off and rebooted for no reason, and then that's when I freaked out. I was like, someone hacked my phone, blah blah blah. They know, that the government knows. I just flipped out. I freaked out. Like I thought life as I knew it was over. I freaked out. So that happened, and that was the freak out point. That's the point that got them trying to commit me to the hospital. And then I've been talking to my stepbrother about this kind of stuff, and like he was in it too for a while. And then he went, and after I flipped out, he was confronted by the parents about it, and they decided, and he just started telling them some things that were true. He started lying to them, telling them like I did this, I did that he had nothing to do with it. He just played along, which is all complete bullshit. He was in it just as much as I was, and he was confirming things for me that I saw without me saying anything, just like the other guy was.
Okay.
So that happened. That was a huge ordeal. I don't talk about it anymore with any of them. I try not to talk about that stuff at all with them. We just pretend like it didn't happen, because there's no point of explaining that stuff to people that are just going to think you're crazy. So
that's my next question. Has your family been open to what's been happening to you now, or you just said it's just you're not talking about it anymore? It cut off with them, and it's just the way it is.
The people that I live with aren't really open to it. My mom is more open to it than everyone else that I live with, because she's had experiences in the past, which I'm not going to get into. I'm not at liberty to divulge her personal experiences.
Of course.
But so that happened. So she talks every now and then. Her and I talk about it a little bit, but I very much take the much more subtle approach. When I talk about things, I don't talk about the crazy stuff with her. When I say crazy, I mean the things that are like blow your mind stuff. But so after all that stuff happened, and I saw like had all this communication with these grays or whatever. That's why I'm calling them, because that's what people identify them as and visualize. I would call them ancient beings, not grays, but we'll call them grays just to keep things at the same page. But so the one night I was at work after this all had been going on, and I was at this desk. There's this desk that we had. It was like a security desk, and it was kind of ovular shaped. Well, I was walking around. I went to work that day. I had a headache. I had a migraine. I felt like my spine hurt, like my body hurt, like I was being jabbed with needles and knives, and it just hurt really bad the whole time. And I was like, man, for almost 4 hours went by. And I was just like, man, I'm in so much pain. What the hell is going on? Like, why do I hurt so much? This is ridiculous. Well, I walked back over to that desk, walked to the one end of it, talked to somebody. Then I turned around and started walking back. I took 2 steps and froze in place. Because in the same way in which I saw everything else, all of a sudden, I saw myself in the center of a room with a bunch of machines hooked up to me and a bunch of grays all sitting around in a circle around me, staring at me. And then, like, I saw them, and they realized that I saw them, and they freaked out. And like the best way I can describe it, it's like I was spiritually abducted or something. Like they were messing with my body in some sort of like other dimension or something. And so I saw that, and I freaked out. And basically what I can describe it as is I saw myself, I got super pissed off. They freaked out. Like the reaction on their faces and the way it felt is like I shouldn't have known that this was happening. I shouldn't have known that they were doing that. I shouldn't have been able to see them, is basically what it felt like, and how they looked. So basically I went on a rampage in that spiritual in whatever realm in which all this stuff exists. It's like I went on a rampage and destroyed a lot of them, and they left me alone for a while.
Okay, so just to be specific, this was a mental, I guess, exercise that was taking place within your mind's eye, or in the spiritual world that you were projecting yourself into. Is that how you would describe that was taking place?
Kind of. Imagine like you draw a picture and you draw a table, and there's people sitting at that table, but it's kind of like the 3D and 2D thing where the people in the picture are alive, but the people outside of it, it's like the people inside the picture can't see the people outside the picture, if that makes sense. So it's like it was happening in another realm of existence, but I was seeing it through my mind.
Okay.
And what?
Oh no, I said okay.
I don't know if that answers your question, but that's probably the best way I can describe it. It's like,
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I get it. So it was you were in your physical world doing your thing, but
I
this
saw
was,
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
okay,
like I saw it like augmented reality, like I said before. All of a sudden, I saw myself in the middle of this room, overlaid over everything where I was standing. And I'm like, holy shit, what's going on?
You.
Yeah,
I got you.
And later, when that guy came back in, him and I were still on speaking terms at this point. And I was talking to him, and I told him something had happened, and he said, "Yeah, you pissed off those ancient guys," is what he told me. I was like, "Oh." So he knew something happened, and I knew he knew something happened because he talked about it a little bit, but he didn't go into detail about it. But he gave me enough detail to know that I knew he knew, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
So he didn't know at first until I said, "Hey, something happened," and then he went and he thought like he went and like opened up, I guess, and to go explore. But he saw it and he said, "Yeah, you gotta. This is what I said. You're drawing attention from things, and they're trying to figure out what's going on." Like he said, "I'm drawing attention," is what he told me, and he said that's why that happened because I drew their attention.
Okay.
Based on like, I don't know, emitting of energy or what, but it drew their attention apparently. And it wasn't a physical. It's not like they picked me up off the floor and took me somewhere. It wasn't like that. It was, like I said, it was very much in that realm of augmented thing. It's like they abducted my spirit or my mind or something, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I've heard many other accounts and stories of similar thing where people claim to have been abducted, but more of like, you know, they feel their body or their, I don't know, say their soul, I don't know how else to describe it, leaving their body, but their physical body is still, like, they could see their physical body where it was, but yet they were still being taken out way. I've heard that kind of thing before.
Kind of
so
like
it sounds
that.
similar to what you're talking about.
I wouldn't say that I was outside of my body. It's more like I consciously became aware of my surroundings.
Exactly. Yeah.
Those
are the stories that I've similar stories that I've heard that are kind of like what you had. Let's see.
I had focus. I had experienced what, like I told you, the Greys. I had seen a couple other types of, well, I guess aliens is what I would say. I don't have any other words to describe them. It's not like that first black thing I saw. I thought it was a demon, where I saw the Greys and I knew that wasn't a demon. It was something else entirely. Where I'd seen some other stuff. I had seen an orange lizard-esque type humanoid was the next, quote, alien entity that I had witnessed. In the very same way that I saw the Greys, I saw this thing and it talked to me a little bit.
Okay.
And it talked, like it showed, so basically I saw what in my mind's eye saw is like a UFO. It landed in my yard. This orange thing comes out, starts talking to me, and then a gray comes out, and they're standing next to each other, and they're both talking to me in the same way I said earlier, where it's like it's your thoughts, but it's like it's in your head, it's your voice, but it's not your thoughts. It's like I could try talking to someone, and they're over talking me. Is like what it's like, and that, like, I would imagine that's what telepathy is. And that's probably how that guy was told to stay where he is in that other story you said. That would be my guess. That was my thoughts on that.
So now, was this any particular time of day that these things were taking
place?
This
was the middle of the day.
Okay.
A lot of time they happened. It didn't really matter what time they happened because these things aren't normally seen by people, I guess, when they travel and whatever means that this is that they're traveling or being there. So I don't think it really matters to them that much what time of day it is. A lot of stuff happened at night, but a lot of time it happened at night, but it happened during the day too, just not as often. It's just the middle of the day is when that thing landed in my yard, in my mind's eye, and they were talking to me. They were telling me things, and then
Okay.
good.
Well, I think that's interest. This kind of leads me to my next question is, you said they were talking to you. Why do you think this is happening to you, or why this happened to you? Do you have any idea why all of a sudden you're able to, you're open to these other dimensions or realms, or, this type of thing happening?
Well, to what I can say is that my family on both sides has a history of spiritual things, where my mom's side of the family has experienced demons, like being sat on, like the typical story of being sat on by a demon, like sleep paralysis, all that kind of stuff, or seeing them in other means. And then on my dad's side, they do read tarot cards and claim to be psychic and all that stuff. So both sides of my family. So if it does run in families, how there's theories out there that I've seen that they say that demons are inherited through families, or like psychic stuff is passed down through families. All this stuff is passed down through families, supposedly.
Yeah, very much so.
So if I were to have inherited all of this, that would make sense, because I used to be afraid of the dark as a kid, deathly afraid, because I used to feel like there was someone there watching me or something. Like, we all have felt that at some point. And I used to be specifically afraid of the dark. I never told my parents exactly why, I guess. They just said there was nothing in the dark. I used to tell them that I used to be afraid of the dark. I told them this recently. I used to be afraid of the dark because I used to always think that there was a shadow, or like a shadow in the shape of a person. It's like there was a person that looked like a shadow in the dark. And I used to see them all the time. That's what I used to think was out there all the time when I was a kid.
This multiple people, or just one being? Or
most of the time it was one or two. Sometimes it was more, but most of the time
really amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that leads to a lot of experiences that people have had called the shadow people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people describe this as at night,
yeah,
or during the day, but they see these beings, and they're not, I don't want to say they're transparent, they don't describe them as transparent, but kind of transparent, and they're in the shape of a humanoid. They don't interact with them, they don't do anything to them, they are like just observing them. They're observing them and trying to figure out, and that's how most people describe it. Some people have described is that there's some interaction, but they don't seem to remember. Now, do you have interaction with that?
Kind of. When I was a kid, I didn't remember this until after I started experiencing all this stuff, and then I remembered it because I must have suppressed it, because that stuff used to scare me constantly. I used to be told it wasn't real, so I just must have suppressed it at some point. But I remember that when I would go out in the dark, I used to feel like I used to think that these shadow people, or whatever they are, would run up on me. Like, I felt like they were going to try to kill me. I felt like they'd run straight at me, and then they would stop like 2 inches from me, and they'd just stop in their tracks and wouldn't do anything. Then they'd leave, and then they'd go away.
That's so typical of how people describe shadow people. Absolutely. That's 100% how people describe shadow people, that they feel like something's going to happen, the creature approaches them, but then they don't do anything. There's no physical interaction or anything like that. They just stop and then leave. And that's how so many people describe the interactions with shadow people.
Well, what's interesting is that the way I remember them appearing to me in my mind's eye, or however, when I was thinking about them, is very similar, if not exactly, the way that I saw the one that came out of that guy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that same experience, they look exactly like that. I actually drew a picture of one. I don't, if I can get it in the stream maybe here to show you guys, but I had drawn a picture of one that was very much what you would describe as a shadow person.
Yeah, this is the type of thing that we need, so people were able to access the Discord, so that.
Oh yeah, I can just
you
post it in the
in
Discord.
there. Yeah,
I'll do that.
and they can see it through.
I'll do that here later if anybody joins. But yeah, so that's
What makes now? You said that your family, has had these experiences both on your mother and father's side. Why all of a sudden do you think, like, what changed or what happened? Do you think that all of a sudden you're just like, your mind just opened up and it's like, here, take this, like all of a sudden you're just opened
just
up to
bombarded by all of it. To be completely honest, I'm still not sure. To my understanding and what I've been told and what I feel like is just that it was just meant to happen because I needed to be able to know that this stuff existed down the road for some reason. Like,
Okay.
if that makes sense, like just being prepared essentially. But
Now,
good.
with all of these things taking place, were you into these type of things in the past at all? Were you open to like this type of stuff? Was it an interest of yours? I mean, for my personal self, I've been listening to these type of things for probably the last, 30 years. Since I was a teenager. I've been interested in the paranormal and aliens and all that type, psychics and, what do you call it? Projection, soul travel, all that type of thing. Were these interests of yours, or you just had no interest in that type of thing at all before?
They were things that piqued my interest, but I never really took the time to explore anything. I just told myself, yeah, it's possible that this stuff's real. I just never really looked into it. I never said no, it's not possible. I was open to the fact that it could be possible, just that I hadn't really experienced it. And I very much believed that, I didn't know how or in which way, but I very much believed that tarot cards, at least depending on who it was, where it could be very accurate, and there was something there to that. Because I had a family that would read them for me. It just got to the point where I did not let my grandmother read my tarot cards if I did not want her to know something.
Yeah, keep secrets from grandma. Don't let her read you.
She's like,
tarot cards.
"Oh, do you want me to read your cards?" I'm like, "Yeah." If there's something going on, I didn't want her to know. I'd be like, I'm good, grandma.
I went out drinking last night.
Yeah, pretty much. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm good, grandma." I just knew, because there was times I asked her and then she would hit things right on the head, and I'm like, I'm good. Like I wouldn't allow her to do it if I didn't want her to know something.
Is your grandmother still around?
Yes.
Still with us?
Yep.
Do you discuss these things with her?
It's a little awkward there. I do talk to her sometimes about the stuff. I was talking to her a lot about it, but then there are certain things that were said that kind of made me question some things in regards to the way she handles some things sometimes. Just kind of like, she didn't do anything wrong or anything. There's just certain things that she said in a certain way that made me like, that's interesting and strange. So I don't know. There's more to it there than I know. So I just I talked to her about some of it. I just choose a lot more carefully now what it is that I talk to her about.
Sure. Do you deal in, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Deal in like tarot card reading and all that stuff right now, or do you not do that anymore?
I have them. I sometimes use them. I mess with them. I use it. To me, it's a tool that I use every now and then. If someone wants me to do it, I'll do it. But I'm not really focused on it. It's interesting to me, so it's something that I have there to mess with to see how it goes. So I haven't really done a whole lot with it. I've done enough where I've like made my own like spreads for it and everything, but I haven't really. And I mess with it every now and then, but it's not like I'm dedicating time to it all the time. So it's not like I get up, I'm going to read tarot cards today. No, I don't do that.
Yeah. Do you deal in? Do you dabble or deal or try to do other sorts of like visualizations in that way, like remote viewing, how remote viewing works? Are you familiar with remote viewing?
Yeah, remote viewing and astral projection. Yes, I have actually experimented with that a lot, and I didn't even know I was doing it at first. I just thought that's the way everybody thought. Because imagine you're in a store and there's security cameras all like up on the ceiling. Well, I used to be able to imagine the perspective of that camera as if I was looking. I could visualize looking around from that perspective of that camera, and I used to do that all the time. So that's nothing I ever really thought was out of the ordinary. I thought everybody does that or can do that, and I'm a very, very visual person. I visualize a lot. I always have. That's why I'm into art. I always like drawing, making pottery, graphic design. Like, I'm a very visual person, and I've always been. Art. My mom is a certified art teacher. My whole family does art on both sides. Okay. Well, not everybody, but a lot of them do art on both sides. And when I started getting into all of this, I was still visualizing things in the same way I visualized that camera, except I noticed that other people or entities noticed when I was doing it. So I thought it was something that, like, I would do it and not even know I was doing it, if that makes sense, because it's just something that I've always done, except now that I was into this stuff, it had more meaning behind it, where before it was just visualizing, and then now, I'm remote viewing and didn't know that's what I was doing.
Okay.
Where I realized that a lot of this stuff is, you have to allow it's like, I used to always think it was my imagination, right? And maybe it was back then, I don't know. But it's like, you have to allow yourself to think that this stuff is potentially real. And then once you start letting go of the restraints that we put on ourselves about in terms of what we've been told and how our mind is supposed to work, once you start letting go of those restraints, you start opening up to a whole lot of stuff. And it's like, I was remote viewing and I started, apparently, that guy at one point, I had started astral projecting, apparently. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but he came in and he walked in, and the first thing he said to me is, "You've been busy today." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, my people told me that you were running around the building like a madman." I was like, "Well, I wasn't running around the building. We're not supposed to run. It's against the rules." And he said, "What I mean is that you mastered astral projection." I was like, "Really?" So you telling? So they knew I was doing stuff they knew in that realm I was doing things, and he confronted me about it when he came in that day.
Yeah. For those who don't know, because I don't know that everybody knows what astral projection is. For those that don't know what astral projection is, that's where you leave your physical body,
kind of.
Like your spirit goes out, or I don't know how else to describe it but saying spirit. You leave your body and you mentally travel or soul travel, and your body stays where it is. At least that's my understanding of what I've heard of it before.
The best way I can describe it, I think that might help some people, is that it's like you're sitting here in front of you, seeing your computer monitor or your hand or the wall in front of you, right? You see it. Well, when you're daydreaming or you're visualizing something, like I said, like, for example, the perspective of that camera is, I'm still seeing what's in front of me, but in my mind, I'm also seeing things from another perspective. So when you're astral projecting, you're supposed to be, at least for me, is I'm sitting here, I'm still very much aware of what's going on around me, but in my mind, I'm seeing different perspectives and different things happening, and it's like I'm going to different areas in my mind in that same way in which you envision things. That's
it in the nutshell. Sure.
Yeah.
You can describe it. Now, do you think that, like, everyone has these abilities and we're just not tapped into them, or we've been so brainwashed since we were kids? Because it's always, when you're in school and stuff, the teacher's like, stop daydreaming, pay attention to what's going on, that type of thing, and people seem to clamp down so much on anything of this type of stuff that people just have been so closed off to it. Or do you think it's just only certain people have the ability? Or everyone does. It's just we're not tuned in.
See, I think with my experience and everything I'm doing and everything I've experienced, I believe everybody's tapped into it. I believe it's something that we all have, but we just don't know that we do, or we don't know that we're tapped into it. For example, when I say everyone's tapped into it, it's like, let's say you think of an idea or something that like you're going to invent, and then all of a sudden within a year 10 people invent that same thing.
Yeah,
or
my dad has that theory. For years he feels like all these ideas he describes it as all these ideas are out there floating, and you just have to mentally concentrate on that, and you can pull that idea down to you and make it a reality, like you said, inventing something and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, in another sense too, is a lot of the stuff that I've came to see in that way in which I see things, I have actually came to realize that a lot of people, whether it's in pop culture or in video games, they actually envision a lot of this stuff and they draw it out into their fantasy. So, like, for example, let's say there was a shadow, like people talk about shadow people. Well, they have things like that in video games, but in the case in which something like that is made in a video game without very much prior knowledge of it, they're tapped into it. It's like, I make Monster X, but Monster X has only been talked about maybe once or twice, if at all, in the history that we're aware of, but I created Monster X in a story. Well, Monster X happened to be seen by somebody who experiences spiritual stuff or envision things in that way. So it's like they're tapped into it without knowing that they're tapped into it, into that realm of things.
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of feel the same way. I think everyone is capable of tapping into all this. It's just most people aren't either open to it, they're afraid to be open to it, or they've been told that it's just fantasy, and they've just been shut down from since they've been a kid and stuff and all that. And that's why so many children who say who have invisible friends, or their imaginary friend, and that's not necessarily imaginary friend they have. Their minds are so much more open to what's out there.
Yeah, it hasn't been filtered yet.
Exactly. So at this point now, in your story, your family, the problem, wanting to commit you, thinking, there's something wrong with you, getting past that you've discussed things with them now, some of them open, some of them not. Where do you see things going at this point now for yourself? Do you feel like there is some sort of purpose that this is supposed to be happening, or you're just kind of playing it by ear as days go by?
Well, I probably don't want to get into a lot of the detail about some of that stuff tonight, but I'll save that for another time. But I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and I believe that I am experiencing this stuff to prepare me for things that could potentially happen in the future. Like things I'll have to experience. Like, for example, you stub your toe on the corner of a chair. Well, now you know that you can stub your toe on the corner of a chair, so you're more likely to avoid stubbing your toe on those chairs later.
Okay.
So, and I do think that there's probably a lot more in the works. Like a lot of people are saying right now that something's happening, there's a shift, everything's changing, and people are changing, and they talk about that in politics, they talk about that in everything. They say that it's like the world right now, there's a big change coming, and a lot of people are saying that they just don't know what it is. And I believe that my experiencing this stuff has a lot to do with that quote big change that is coming.
So. Yeah, well, I think a lot of people have, over, I would say, the last 10 years, have become so much more awakened and aware of that this isn't the only thing. This reality that we experience is not the only thing there is. There's so much more, and that it can be tapped into. And I think a lot of people have woken up to that in our experience and that type of thing. Becoming aware.
I would agree.
And I also think it's something that we lost. I think it's a reawakening of abilities that in the past were very much part of everyone. And for whatever reason, it got closed down. There's a lot of theories as to why it's gotten closed down, that it's been intentional, that we've been cut off from the spiritual world for a reason. But I think a lot of people are definitely starting to wake up to that type of thing again.
Yeah, I think it's something that's always been there. And if you go back and you look through a lot of the history of the different cultures and stuff, it is stuff that they've experienced and talked about. It's just we like to dismiss it as it's not existing. Just like, for example, like they say that certain things don't exist because you can't test them, but everybody experiences certain things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it would have been like an early scientist saying, oh, well, the wind exists only because the wind is there, not that it's pushing a substance around, which in reality, wind is substance being pushed around, which is the air that we breathe.
Yeah. It's just as it's been said, my favorite person, he's no longer alive, passed away, Art Bell, used to say, as real as the air we breathe, even though we can't see it.
Yeah.
So at this point, do you want to go any further with your story, or are you kind of like, that's kind of where you want to end things for right now with the story?
Well, I think that I have a lot to say, and I don't want to say it all in one night, all in one session. I want to spread it out for people, because we could be here for 20 hours straight talking about stuff. So
yeah. So, talking about tarot cards and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you what's your opinion on the Ouija board? I'm just curious about that.
My grandmother, who does tarot, has always told me never touch a tarot. I'm not tarot. Never touch a Ouija board. I've never touched a Ouija board, and I haven't messed with one. Would I in the future, perhaps? Maybe. Now that I have a better understanding of what all this stuff is, I believe that I would be fine. But I believe where people get in trouble with that stuff is they're tapping into things that they don't know what they're tapping into. They have no idea how to handle anything in that realm.
Yeah. Well, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're getting. You don't know what's coming through there.
Yeah.
You're using it as a doorway, basically, to open up to another realm, and you don't know what's going to come at you if you're not experienced. I mean, I have a Ouija board. I'm staring at it right now. It's hanging up on my wall. I think you've seen a picture of it in the past. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't touch it. It hangs up there. It's a nice decoration. I don't handle it. I don't use it. I've never used it. One of the reasons is because it's over 100 years old. I don't know what this board was used for in the past. I don't know what people tried to do with that board.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows what's attached to it. So that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't do it with one out of a box brand new either.
Yeah.
Because I just feel you don't know what you're getting when you mess with that type of thing. But it hangs on my wall. It's a nice decoration. I look at it. I can tell you when I do handle it, I don't physically touch it. I usually touch it with a cloth or something like that.
That's funny. You don't touch it with your skin?
No, not at all.
That's funny.
Or anything, I just don't. And if anyone in the chat has a question or any questions or anything,
or an
feel free
experience
to put it into the chat, or an experience that you've had, any type of experience with abductions or
Ouija boards, any kind of
stuff. Yeah,
any kind of anything like that. Go ahead and feel free to tell us about it, or if you have any specific questions for us, go ahead and ask us, and we'll reply. It's meditation can have some weird experiences. Yeah, I agree. If you're meditating, and your mind goes off and does its own thing, you can experience some very interesting things. Today, I actually had my first out-of-body experience while I was meditating, and it was, it was definitely something to behold.
outer body soul travel is awesome. I've had 2 experiences in my life with it, and my one experience was when I was a teenager.
Also, if you have questions about aliens, sorry, go ahead to cut you off. I just
No, that's fine. And yeah, there was at that time I was into the idea of astral projection and all that and everything, and had read books about it and stuff. Had tried it, nothing had happened, and then I was 17. I think I had just turned 17, and I had broken up with my girlfriend of 2 years. And so she was my first real girlfriend, first real love. So it was a traumatic experience, breaking up with her and everything. And one day I was sitting and I was thinking about her, and I was just like, we had talked on and off. It's like, I really want this relationship back. Like, I miss this, And I started thinking about her, and all of a sudden I was like, bam, I was like traveling down the highway to go to her house, and with the traveling down the highway, making all the turns in front of her house, in her house, all through the house, saw her. This all happened within, like, I don't know, 5 seconds, but I was there. Like, I was actually there. And then all of a sudden I was back. Like, something just, like, I realized, and it scared me and it pulled me back.
Yeah.
But it definitely was a real thing. And I think one of the reasons it was able to happen is because my passion and desire to be back with her was so real that it made it happen, And the weird thing is that I hadn't spoken to her in a couple weeks, and that night she called me and said, I was really thinking about you today. So that was kind of that was my one experience I had with that. And then another time I tried it, and I had an experience also where I kind of did I astral projected out, and could actually see myself. So I've had that as 2 experiences.
Huh. Well, the best way I would describe that for people now that I actually have experienced what you're talking about is that it's like, if you're going to meditate or whatever, you're falling asleep, everything goes black, and then you kind of like, even when you're asleep, you kind of lose, it's like you lose the acknowledgement that your body's a thing. It's like you're in another world, or like you're in another body. Well, the way in which I experienced this was, imagine I'm sitting here and talking to you. It's like I was falling asleep, everything was black, I was having a conversation, and I started, I was meditating, it was just black, I was thinking about stuff, and the next thing I know, I'm standing up, and I'm walking around, and it's somewhere completely different than where I am. I've never been there before, and I was looking around, I was like, well, this is interesting. Like, I felt like I had to learn how to walk again. Like, it just felt strange. Like, I couldn't smell anything, and I couldn't feel anything, but I could hear and see. I was like, okay, this is interesting. And it's like as if you were actually there, but you're still awake and you're aware that you are going through it. It's kind of like a lucid dreaming, except you're not sleeping.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just about to ask you about that. Do you lucid dream?
Sometimes, not so much anymore. Until recently, I stopped having dreams for the most part once I started experiencing all this stuff. But then I started having dreams again lately, and no, I haven't. I guess it would be lucid dreaming because I'm aware that I'm sleeping, or I'm at least controlling the dream without. It's like sometimes I'm aware, sometimes I'm not, and then certain things come to me when I'm sleeping. Like, I'll see certain things, and then I wake myself up because I realize I'm sleeping.
Okay.
So
yeah, now I lucid dream all the time. I can decide right now. I'm gonna go to bed. This is what I'm gonna dream about, and exactly the way I want it to be.
Yeah,
no problem. That has been going on forever with me, and that was from when I was a kid. Me and one of my best friends, we used to try and do that. Like, that's what we were trying to do, was to see if we could control our dreams. We didn't know that it was called lucid dreaming, or anything at that time and stuff. But we used to do it. The funny thing was that people say, like, depending on what you eat, before you go to bed, can affect you and stuff like that. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah,
And,
I have heard that.
And so we used to experiment, like eating different stuff and everything, and then see what would happen. So it was pretty funny.
All right.
Sorry, I got distracted.
No, that's
for a
okay.
minute.
So,
Someone walked in on me
gotcha.
while I was talking, interrupting
Gotcha.
my thought. So, lucid dreaming's awesome. I mean, if you haven't ever tried it, definitely give it a shot. Read about it, look it up, see what it is, and then go for it. You'll have a great time lucid dreaming. I mean, I just, love it. I think it's fantastic to do.
Yeah.
Did you? What are your thoughts on? Because we've got some time here. Talk about some other things. What is your opinion on near-death experience? That, where people say, where like they tell them you died, and the person, is like, they saw their body, and they tell people afterwards, and they're like, oh, that's ridiculous, it's just your mind. But the guy's like, no, it did happen, because on top of that shelf there that you can't see, there's like 3 quarters and a penny, and they look and it's there.
Yeah.
That's an actual story that happened to a guy that I've heard about. What's your opinion on near-death experience?
I believe that is probably a thing. I've almost died, but I haven't experienced that level of anything while doing it. I don't know if I was just, I don't know if I was dying or if I was just losing consciousness or what, but I was just like, I started losing my feeling to my body. Like I wasn't able to feel anything. Well, and then I couldn't see anything anymore. Even when my eyes were open, everything was black. I started, like literally this happened. I got really sick, but and then so all the feeling was gone, all the smell was gone. I couldn't feel my own body. I couldn't see anything. The last thing to go was my hearing. So I lost all other senses, and then I got to the point where I could almost not hear anything anymore. And then I heard someone screaming to me. They were off in the distance, they were really far away, but they were right in front, right in my face, trying to get me to wake up. And all of a sudden, they said something to me. I heard them, and just the one thing that they said, it's like I heard them. It was louder, and then I opened my eyes, and then all my feelings started coming back, and then I started coming out of it. But it was right when I thought I was gonna die, I just knew. I just was overcome with this feeling of everything's going to be okay, that everything will be fine, and I just wanted my family to know that I loved them and that everything was going to be okay.
Yeah, that's a lot of how people describe that's one of the things people describe when they have near-death experience, is that they feel no fear, they completely feel calm, content.
They accept it.
Yep. And that this is okay, there isn't a problem, and they're fine. A lot of people have that experience when it comes to near death. But what's interesting is that, like I said, though, this guy he was in a hospital, and he described afterwards that he was floating above the table, and you could see the doctors working on him and everything, trying to get his heart started again, and he could. On top of a shelf, he saw 3 quarters and a penny. I think there was a paper clip there, and it was all dusty. And when he came back, he said he saw the doctors and all this, and everybody was like, "It's just your imagination. You were unconscious. Your heart had stopped beating. It was just electrical stuff in your brain." But he said, no, up on the shelf, and they checked it, and sure enough, there was the things that he had described on that shelf, and they were all full of dust, so it wasn't like they had been put up there. It was covered in dust and everything, and other people have described similar episodes like that, with near-death experiences and stuff. So there's a lot out there that I think people, they don't want to experience because they're afraid. They're afraid of what could happen, and it's the simple thing of being afraid of the unknown.
Yep.
People are afraid of the unknown. That's what scares you. But I think there's more, like we said, more and more people are opening up to that. And really, it isn't anything, I don't think, to be afraid of. You know, I think people should be open to it and try to, as they say, you know, free their minds, open up to other worlds and dimensions and things that are out there. I mean, I'll admit myself, I'm opened up to a lot of it, had experiences. There are some I've pulled back because I'm like, no, not going there. You know, I'm not going to take it any further than that. Because you're worried about, you know, because again, the fear of the unknown, you know, afraid of what could happen and everything. But a lot of it, I think, it's what your attitude going in, maybe too. You know, if you're open to it, I think you'll be fine if you're not afraid. But like I said, I don't do it because I'm afraid of what might come through. It's like the Ouija board. You know, I think the Ouija board is awesome. I think the idea of seances, tapping into the spirit world, what's beyond and all that. But you don't know what you're going to pull in. So you're like, no, you know.
I almost think that you might be able to communicate with aliens in the same fashion. Which would be interesting to see if people try that.
A lot of people believe that that is how people communicate with aliens.
Really?
That, you know, they're given information telepathically. Like the one thing with the lady that I told you about at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
She says that she's still in contact with them telepathically. There was a story.
I meant more of the Ouija board.
Yeah, that you can do that. I think what it is the Ouija board, tarot cards, seances, you know, visualizing, meditation, all of that is all different ways to the same thing. You're opening yourself up to the other realities that exist around us.
Yeah.
And some people are just afraid of it. There was an interesting story talking about alien, we're talking about abductions and everything, of a guy who was a truck driver. And he was going from, God, I can't remember. He was heading, I think, to Fredericksburg, and I forget where he was coming. It was like an 80-mile trip. This happened in 1979. And he experienced a craft, and I think a bright light, if I remember this story correctly. And all of a sudden, he was driving a tractor trailer, and all of a sudden he is inside the ship. His tractor trailer is in this massive ship, and I think these beings were coming towards him or something. He had a gun. He pulled the gun out and shot. Okay, you know, because he was that terrified. And then nothing happened. He was in the cab for I don't know how long. I don't remember what they said. He gets out of the cab, and there's like a giant window, and he looks out this window, and he is in outer space. And then all of a sudden, at that point, he's back on Earth, but he's at the destination he was heading to.
And he's back in his truck. Yeah,
in his truck. Now, he traveled the 80 miles. He was at the beginning of the trip when this happened. He arrives at his destination. It's the time that, according to the time he had, there's no way he could have traveled the distance. And his truck shows that he didn't travel that far. So, and his boss and everybody recognized this. You know, they're like, wait, you didn't travel the distance. So he has this experience, and then I guess later, so basically what happened is he was teleported.
Yeah.
And then later on, he has an experience where he's laying in bed, and all of a sudden, the ceiling, the roof of his house disappears, and he can see all the stars. Like, he can see through his roof. And he turns and looks at his wife, and he can see through his wife. Like, he can see her skeleton. And he is seeing this, and it really freaked this guy out. I guess he got out of, he's like, oh my, what is happening to me? I'm going insane. Gets out of his car, or gets out of his house, driving his car. He's freaking out because he's seeing all this stuff. and like he can see through things. He has X-ray vision. What the hell is wrong with him? I guess he went on something like a 2.5 state police chase where the police were chasing him. They finally pull him over. He's really agitated. He's freaking out. He ends up in prison cell. I guess they bring in a doctor to examine him and everything and all of this, and he's calmed down, and the doctor's like, there's nothing wrong. We don't know what's wrong. There's nothing wrong with this guy. He's not on drugs, he's not drunk. He's fine mentally. We don't know, and it's just a really weird story that happened. I guess after that, he just kind of became a recluse and kind of like shied away from everybody, didn't want to be around people and stuff like that. But I mean, can you imagine all of a sudden, like, you have this experience of being abducted, and then all of a sudden he's able to see through things, and it just totally freaked him out. And I can see why it would freak you out.
Oh yeah, it would.
If you don't know what that type of thing and stuff. Oh, yeah.
I get that. Well, I do have to say we just hit the second hour. We just went over our second hour, so it's getting kind of late.
Yeah, but, we're almost at the bottom of the hour here.
Yep.
And stuff. Do you want to kind of call things right here then?
Yeah. If anybody has any questions real quick, though, before we head off for the night, feel free to post them in there if you have any comments. If you want to go ahead and follow, we'll be doing this at least once a week to start off, maybe more later. And we're going to shoot for, at least right now, the plan is to shoot for 9 o'clock at night every Tuesday.
Yep, exactly. That is the plan. And definitely, yeah. And we're going to put, actually in the description, we're going to get in the information for the Discord and everything.
Well, the Discord is in there. It's already a link. You can get in there. And what we plan on doing with that is making it so if there's anyone in here that wants to come on and talk about their own experiences, what we'll end up doing is we will drag people, have them join into the Discord, and then we'll drag them over. I guess I should have
refreshed my browser, as they say.
Yeah,
I see it.
And if they want to talk to us, what we can do is pull them over and talk to us and tell us about their story. And then what we'll do is we'll have a queue set up so people can get in and do that. So we can
definitely for questions and stuff like that. Yep. For sure.
Questions, stories, whatever. We'll be bringing the viewers into the experience.
All right, so I guess that's what we're gonna call it right here.
Yep. And
all right, so
everybody, have a good night. Hope we didn't alter your reality too much. And any last parting words from you, Rockford? Sorry, David.
No, not really. Just this was episode 1 Abductions for Space King Podcast, January 8th, 2019. And I guess that's it.
All right, everybody have a good night and sleep well, and I hope you have a great day tomorrow. Well, great week. See you next time.
Bye-bye.